welcome to Real Truth Real Quick. My name is Rick Smith. I'm here with Todd Wagner.
Hello, friends.
And here's the question for today. My company wants me to do something I don't agree with. How should I respond?
Well, with grace, with humility, with kindness, with a desire to let them know that in everything you do, you want to serve them and allow them to prosper in every way. And if what they're asking you to do, you believe is not going to allow them to prosper, then I would approach that with them in a very gentle way. I think Daniel is a good example for us in that. In Daniel chapter 1, verse 8, Daniel is asked to do some things that violates his conviction before God. And so it says Daniel made up his mind that he would not defile himself, specifically with the king's choice food or the wine which he drank. And then it says that God granted him favor in the sight of the king and those that were over him. So I'd pray for favor when you go to him. I would just make sure, Rick, that the way you go about it is gracious with a commitment to excellence, and that they know that what you're trying to do is what's best for the company. And honestly, sometimes you might go, look, it may not just be best for the company, Todd. Sometimes it's something like they want me to participate in something that's a violation of my conscience. Okay? So you recently, in fact, asked me about a question about a guy that was asked to do some wedding planning at a hotel that he worked at for a wedding that he didn't believe that he should participate in. And it may not be a surprise to many people that are listening to this that happened to be a homosexual wedding. You remember what I said to you when we talked about this?
You said a lot of things.
Well, one of the things I said is, one of the things that would concern me about this person is if they are really doing a good job in vetting every other wedding that they ever were a part of. In other words, is he pretty sure that every other wedding that he ever helped organize at that hotel in terms of making rooms available for the reception or even for the wedding party, that was a wedding between two people that were fully devoted to Jesus Christ? Is he sure that he was never a part of planning a wedding at that hotel between a man and a woman where one was a believer and the other one wasn't a believer? Is he sure that every wedding that he was a part of was a wedding that the people involved were biblically qualified to be married? In other words, there wasn't somebody that had inappropriately left a former relationship and now was going to go forward and recovenant with another person. And so what I want to say is that a lot of times, some of the stuff that we say we shouldn't do, we have what I would call convictions of convenience, and we want to be consistent in our ethic. At the same time, we don't ever want to do something just because we are fearful for our job. We don't ever want to seek the favor of men. This is Galatians chapter 1, verse 10. Paul says that, am I seeking the favor of men or of God? Am I striving to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I wouldn't be a bondservant of Jesus Christ. And we want to be bondservants of Jesus Christ. But let me read us, some scripture that I think is about as applicable as I can to this particular thing. We've already talked about excellence in your work, being a person they don't want to lose. And so what you can say is, hey, is there any way that you can ask somebody else to do this? Okay, now, by the way, if the company's involved in unethical practices, I think you need to deal with that in appropriate ways. And even our laws are set up. We've got whistleblower laws.
So we're not talking about illegal issues here. We're just talking about issues of conscience.
More matters of conscience. Let me just read to you from 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 13. It says, submit yourself for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. Watch this, verse 15. For such is the will of God, that by doing right you may silence the ignorance of foolish men. Act as free men, yet don't use your freedom as a covering for evil, but use it as a bondslave of God. Honor all people, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. Verse 18, servants, be submissive to your masters with all respect, not only to those who are good and gentle, but also to those who are unreasonable. For this finds favor for the sake of conscience toward God. A person bears up under sorrows when suffering unjustly. It says, now be careful. Make sure that their offense is not your arrogance, your piousness, your spiritual inconsistency. But if you in a gracious way say, I can't do that because it would offend my God, and you suffer for that, and you suffer then it says that you find favor when you do it that way. It says, for what credit, though, is there if when you sin and are harshly treated, you endure it with patience? But if when you do what is right and suffer for it, you patiently endure it, this finds favor with God. I would just tell you, in our increasingly post-Christian culture, believers ought to get ready to have some consequence there for their conviction. The scripture really picks up then in terms of what we should do. Because when it gets to verse 21, it says, for you have been called for this purpose, since Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. And it says, who committed no sin, nor was any deceit found in his mouth. It says, when he suffered, when he reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not utter threats, but he kept entrusting himself to the one who judges rightly. And so what I would say is be a man of excellence, pray for favor and compassion from the king, go in a humble way, be the kind of guy they don't want to lose, don't be inconsistent in your convictions, and if you do suffer unjustly, do it humbly and know that you find favor with God and trust him with your future.
Good stuff. All right. Well, hey, listen, you can check out all of our episodes at realtruthrealquick.com or on our YouTube channel. We have show notes there, all the other episodes, and you can submit your own question, any question that you have about life, leadership, the world around us. Send those in, and we'd love to answer one of your questions on an upcoming episode.
We'll even put a link, Rick. I did a series a long time ago called What to Do If You Hate Your Job and What to Do Before You Leave the Job You Hate. So we'll put a link to those messages as well.
All right. Check it out.